Welcome back to The Count, where we're counting down the major stories of the week. I'm John Tobacco. We're wrapping up our countdown with story number 1. A week of trans tyranny. It's getting worse by the day. Transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney, a biological guy, speaking out for the first time following the major outrage that stemmed from Dylan's partnership with Bud Light.
What I'm struggling to understand is the need to dehumanize and to be cruel. I don't think that's right. You know, dehumanization has never fixed anything in history, ever. And, you know, I'm embarrassed to even tell you this, but I was nervous that you were going to start believing those things that they were saying about me, since it is so loud. But I'm just going to go ahead and trust that the people who know me and my heart won't listen to that noise. I don't know if reincarnation is a thing, but in my next life, I would love to be someone non-confrontational and uncontroversial.
I just want to point out that as a pretty seasoned connoisseur of spirits, most biological males wouldn't touch a Bud Light, so they may have the right spokesperson there. But joining me now to break it down even more into Dylan Mulvaney's comments and the controversy, Turning Point USA contributor Lauren Chen, Project 21 member and host of Stacy on the Right, Stacy Washington. Thank you both, ladies. It's not only Bud Light, but maybe it's Maybelline, the latest company to face a boycott after partnering up with Dylan Mulvaney. You know, I got to ask you, Stacy, as apparently a biological woman, what are your thoughts on Maybelline hiring a guy to be their spokesperson?
Well, this has actually been going on for a while. A lot of the major makeup companies have transgender makeup artists who really do very well in the space. And so it's not that this is new, it's that Dylan Mulvaney, while saying on one hand that he would like to be less controversial, is ultimately dehumanizing actual biological women by presenting himself as one and taking up spots that should be filled by biological women. And as he becomes more mainstream with his caricature of what women are, heavy makeup, lots of overt, mannerisms, his entire presentation of what he thinks a woman is utterly ridiculous. And it is contentious because we as women, it's more than just makeup and hair. Being a biological woman involves a lot of things that really aren't fit to be discussed on this program. And those realities are a daily thing that you can't avoid. And it starts in your preteen years. And you live with it for your entire life. And as a biological woman, I'm happy to be one. This is what God made me. But I think you either want to be controversial, which he is. He goes out of his way to be controversial. And therefore, the backlash is appropriate. And if he can't take it, simply step out of the space and stop pretending to be a woman.
Stacy, my co-host on my show, Wise Guys, Kara Castronova, she's a former professional boxer, quite the feminist, might I add. She said probably one of the best lines I heard. Any of these people that want to say they're a woman go through one day of a menstrual cycle and they'll go right back to being a man. What do you think?
Well, I think it's more than that even, and I think that is a great way of starting the conversation. But there's also being a woman in spaces where you actually aren't welcome. And he's not experiencing that. He's not experienced that from the time he was a young girl, growing up in spaces where women are supposed to be there and you're there and you are biologically a woman. There is no comparison.
Got it. Lauren, what are your thoughts on this whole controversy? I think it's crazy.
It is, and it's frustrating to see Dylan Mulvaney now come out and play the victim after he has offended and insulted, honestly, women everywhere. He acts like, as Stacy was saying, like a caricature of a woman. He plays ditzy, he plays dumb. Also, he's embraced the man-eater trope. He did a video saying that he could steal someone's husband. If a woman embodied herself that way online, she would rightfully get a lot of criticism. But because Dylan claims to be trans, honestly, I think he's more of an opportunist. But because he claims to be trans, instead he is celebrated for it. And it really is a slap in the face to women everywhere. He was a woman, quote unquote, a woman for less than a year. He was given how many sponsorships? He was invited to the White House to talk to President Biden. And I just think of all of these women out there who are so deserving, who work so hard, but because they're not trans, they're no longer at the top of the oppression hierarchy, so the left is now overlooking them.
No question about it. Now, this one really gets my goat. Controversial swimmer, trans swimmer, Leah Thomas, making headlines again after calling out her feminist critics. Take a listen.
They're like, oh, we respect Leah as a woman, as a trans woman, whatever. We respect her identity. We just don't think it's fair. You can't really have that sort of half support.
Leah Thomas says her critics are using feminism, claiming to hide their transphobia. Newsflash, Leah, it's not fair. We shouldn't have to explain it to you over and over. Also, stop explaining feminism to feminists, said former tennis great Martina Navratilova. Lauren, I got to ask you, it is good to see someone like Martina Navratilova coming out and, you know, taking Dylan Mulvaney to the woodshed, isn't it?
Absolutely. And regarding Leah Thomas's comments, of course it's not fair for him to compete against biological females. The man's got shoulders broader than the border wall. There's absolutely no sane world that would allow him to compete against females. And there's a reason why sports are sex, not gender segregated, by the way, sex segregated. And so for Leah to say, oh, well, it's just transphobia. Well, how about, Leah, how about you go back to where you belong, compete against the males, and, you know, you'd once more become this average middle-of-the-road swimmer that no one took notice of. The only way that Leah Thomas can get attention is by unfairly competing against females. And honestly, I think more people should be calling him out, not just for, you know, the whole trans issue, but honestly for being a bad sportsman ultimately, because regardless of whether we allow him to compete against women, he shouldn't, just based on principle, because he knows he has an advantage.
That is for sure. Snowflake alert. If we misgendered anyone in that segment, we apologize. Not. Ladies, I want to thank you both very much for joining me tonight on The Count. #1 story, #1 panel. Thanks so much, Lauren Chen, Stacy Washington.